we go.
Welcome back to another episode of Ministry Chemistry, where today, I'm so excited. It's been one of my dreams for the past
You're a bit
year.
giddy about
I am
this.
so excited because today we have another guest with us. This is Jill, everyone.
Woo-hoo. Hello.
If we had like a clap track, like on, sitcoms, yay, Jill.
Jill is
Yeah, I was getting there, but go ahead.
Brad's wife.
Jill is Brad's wife.
Damn.
How long have y'all been married?
23 years.
23 years.
Wow.
Yeah, a
And
long time.
This is one of those days I really do wish we had like video to accompany our audio because you're both wearing green
Yep.
and you did not plan it.
We did not.
But it makes me wonder if you have like those dressers where every day of the week is like stacked, color coordinated.
We have dressers, yes.
Oh, good. And closets, I'm sure. All the children wear varying colors of green as well. You guys aren't the weird family at all.
They share a profile on Stitch Fix, right?
Comes in one box.
That's funny.
We share the same box.
Stitch Fix. Oh, that would be, hey, idea, $1 million idea right there. So Mike pointed out that we are gender
equal.
Yeah.
I almost said gender neutral, but that is a different thing.
Yeah,
Different
let's not go there.
podcast.
Yeah, gender
That
equal.
is a rabbit hole that
Yeah, no.
I'm not touching today.
No, yeah, we got 2 gals, 2 guys, and we're
Yes.
gonna have some conversations. The first one is Jill.
Yes.
Give us a snapshot of just like who you are.
Who I am. Well, let's see. I would say I'm a wife. I'm a mother to 3 teenagers. And I work full time at a large nonprofit. So that pretty much is all my life. People ask me if I have hobbies, and I don't really. I don't have time. I mean, I guess music is one.
Yes, you're
music
quite-
at church.
you're quite
but
the
other than
vocalist,
that,
right?
I don't have time for hobbies. I do okay. I
Sing a
can
little
hold
ditty?
my own.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She can carry a tune.
Yes.
And I would wonder, what is it like to be married to Brad, who never watches TV? Do you watch TV?
I watch TV.
He watches
No.
sports.
Yeah, she doesn't
You
watch
don't
TV.
watch shows. We've been over this.
I don't watch shows.
Right.
Except West Wing.
Over and over.
and
Yeah.
over and
That's
Well, why
over.
wouldn't you?
That's true.
Are you a show watcher? Do you watch TV movies?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah, but not your standard. Well, I mean, I like historical kind of fiction, that kind of stuff,
Period pieces.
and so the Downton Abbey, like that kind of stuff,
right.
and so I'll get into those and watch them straight through.
The Crown, yeah.
The Crown, yes, that kind of stuff.
I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Okay,
Because I just found out something about you that really just blew.
Now this is just proof that I'm not going to tell Mike ever anything.
That's
anymore.
right.
Oh,
we
no,
want Jill to
about
come
something
back.
I watch.
Well, it's so. I mean, people can tell already. Like you're soft spoken. That gives away a lot of your nature. But I hear you have an affection for a certain type of television show.
Reality shows.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like
I do watch a few.
Housewives of.
Yep. I do
That
watch some
blew
of the
my
Housewives
head
shows.
open.
I know. It's one of those things that's kind of, you're not proud of it, but so Mike points it out. No,
So Mike points
Right.
it out.
Oh, and the kids these days say blew my mind, but not Mike. He says blew my head open. So
I do.
It literally mushroom cloud. I was like, what? Like Brad had to repeat it twice. There's no way your wife watches that. No way.
I'll get into seasons while I watch some. I do like I like watching people's lives. And so, as reality shows have
stories.
gone on, it's less and less real. And so I'm seeing that now. But I do like observing other people's lives.
I like how you stopped short of implode, because most people would add that onto the end. I like watching people's lives implode, because that's pretty much what you see on the
And
Housewives
a lot
show.
of arguing.
top 2, 3 that you really love.
New York, Orange County.
This is amazing.
And
New York and Orange County.
you notice she didn't have to pause.
No, she knows.
Oh, in Beverly Hills.
yes, Sarah. Oh, of course.
So
Why
all
wouldn't
of
you?
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't
those
mention
3.
Atlanta.
There are others that I've not let myself get, because once you start, then you kind of have to keep going, and so I've not.
It's like
Well, sure.
heroin.
I don't get it. I haven't
It's
done
a lot
Dallas
like
or
heroin.
Atlanta or any of those.
Investment. Yeah, definite investment.
Yeah.
And so if you're still with us, we would love you to stick with us, because we've actually got 2 really great, at least 2, if not more, topics that we really want to talk with Jill about, which are what's it like to be married to someone who's in full-time ministry or full-time church work, And then wow, my words just got jumbled. The work that she does is specifically with fostering and adoption. And so we're going to pick her brain and heart about some of that. So the first question really is, though, what is it like to be in a full-time role that's not church-based, married to someone who's in a church-based full-time job?
Yeah. So I think when I first came in, when Brad first started in ministry, I struggled with that. I probably still do a little because I have a very full-time job. I travel, and a lot of spouses that I observed in roles in youth ministry, so married to someone who does youth ministry, get to be along for the ride all the time. You know, either they're a teacher, and so every summer retreat they're there, and they're able to go on everything, and every weekend, and I have not been able to do the same. And so that's been probably the hardest thing for me is understanding that I have my own calling and needing to save enough of myself for that calling as well as supporting his and trying to be a part of his as well.
Now, here's a question that I'm not sure if we've asked before, but how has the balance of both a vocational minister as a parent and then someone who loves the Lord and is in ministry, but in their own way, how do you think that's affected your kids and the way that you've intentionally engaged them in church stuff versus non-church stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
You should answer that question.
I should. I think being in youth ministry and having teenagers and having your teenagers in your youth ministry has been the most unique factor. I think, fortunately for us, we have had wonderful adult volunteers that pour into our kids so that they're that outside voice. Because I think otherwise that could possibly not be great, for the kids. They're like, their dad's everywhere, their mom's everywhere, they can't ever get away. But fortunately, we have those adults who will be that outside voice and go and talk to our kids. And so I think that's been a blessing, and that's made it much more okay.
The other struggle from my point of view is really being able to let them understand where I'm dad and where I'm youth pastor.
Oh, yeah.
Having an understanding of when those roles are fully engaged. And I try to, the best of my ability, when I walk through the door at home, work is behind me and I'm fully dad. And there are times that those lines get blurred just slightly at church, but
what would be I'm trying to think of when would that be blurred? I think it'd be hard to not be dad all the time.
It is, and I think that especially some of our kids in general, they have to get used to being examples of things. I just in a small group setting that we had, I used our youngest daughter putting her hand on a burner of a stove as an object lesson. No. And I asked her afterwards, I'm like, are you okay with that? And she goes, I died a little bit inside, but this is cool. Okay. But otherwise, I mean, they understand that some of those kinds of stories will creep in. I'm never going to tell a story that is outlandishly embarrassing or something really personal without clearing it with them first. But when I'm at work kind of thing, which is weird for me to say. If I had time to tell all of my backstory, I'm usually as soon as I'm done with quote unquote work, I've unplugged that and I don't even think about it. And now those lines are getting blurred. And so that's a personal thing that I try to concentrate on.
Well, and it's funny. I was trying to think, it's an interesting conversation that I think you could parallel to a coach and a teacher as well, right? Like if I'm a teacher at a school and then I have my kid in the same grade level as me or the same school building as me, there is that question of when am I teacher and when am I mom or dad or whatever that looks like. But in this regard, not many kids come home and complain about their youth minister. So it's not like they'd come home and be like, Mom, like to you, and be like, you're not going to believe what our youth minister did, or...
There have been times when I've come home after a Wednesday night service and they're all in our bedroom talking to Jill and I know
They're-
that there's been a conversation.
Yep, that's happened.
But that's great, I think, that they're like, hey, we're just going to talk to mom about this because dad won't want to hear it. And that's fantastic balance.
Yeah.
Whereas you might get him in the car ride to and from sometimes, right? Well, Anna's driving now.
They
so.
never want to be in the car with me. We go to church on Sunday in 4 cars.
We do. It's sad.
4. There's
4
5
cars.
of you.
They live 5 minutes from church.
And we live literally 6 minutes from church. And so the fact that we have to go and
We have
part
to
of
be there
that
3
is
different
timing.
times.
Man, I wish I was more green because I would totally make like a green impact like Earth right now. But I'm like, oh no, that totally makes sense to me, right? 3 different times, 4 different cars.
It's all right. The ozone's going to be there until we're dead.
God restores that in the whole like coming back, so it's fine. Like totally okay.
So I have a follow-up question. This kind of bridges the 2 topics that you had mentioned. So obviously Brad just completed ordination last year, and I think Reverend Brad, which is hilarious. But I think
Ouch.
Why is that hilarious?
no, I think just the title.
Reverend
We've
Pastor
talked about the
Brad.
whole Reverend thing. Like our
Yeah.
mail says Reverend on it. and
It should say
just-
the Reverend.
Yeah.
The right
No.
Reverend Brother Doctor.
Anyway,
Sorry,
before I was so rudely interrupted.
you're right. So rude.
So I think in the church world, we have attached the word calling to pastoral, and you feel like, I mean, obviously you're living out a calling in what you do. Do you think that's broadened your kids' perspective on the meaning of calling and how it can branch outside the church?
I hope so. I hope that has translated to them, that they see that and they understand it, because I definitely feel that the work that I'm in at this point is a calling at this moment. I don't know what the next one will be,
Right.
but and that everyone has a calling, and some are to actual full-time ministry and some aren't, but they're all callings.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and I think the really inspiring piece of your story that I just recently learned is you've been in corporate America for all of your professional career.
Yes.
And there was a season where you said, I just need to step out and figure out, like recalibrate almost.
Correct.
And say, where can I re-enter this world, but with a different maybe target or focus? And so what would you say to the person who's sitting there at 35, 40, feels that they're in the trenches? How am I ever going to make this leap and this change? What would you say to them who's like, just, I'm stuck?
Yeah, I was there. I felt like I was stuck. I was in corporate America. I was doing fine, but it wasn't my heart and soul, and I knew that for a long time. And so I had to try to figure out how to make that leap. I think the number one thing that I would say is you can do it. You can make the leap. Often you think you can't. You don't have experience in something else, and that holds you back. Number one, most important, would be talk to other people who are doing it. And the more people who know what you want to do and what you're curious about, the more people who are out there watching and listening, and when they see opportunities, they can bring them to you. That's the most important thing. I did the crazy thing of leaving corporate America with nothing else, which is not my personality at all.
There is no next. But
Oh, wow. That is so not me.
She's a safety girl.
But I did it for 3 or 4 months because I found that I was in a position where I was so exhausted, I could not evaluate. I could not chart my course. And so I had to take a moment of pause. I had to take that risk. And I remember saying, God, if you drop me, I don't know if my faith will recover. And thankfully, and all praise to him, he didn't drop me, not even close. So
I just talked to someone about that, like literally at lunch today. She was talking about being in a world where she knew everything and she was comfortable in her job, and then transitioning to the unknown. And I was like, I know it's easier to say from an outsider's perspective, but it's like, isn't that exactly where God wants us to be? And she was
Totally
like,
dependent.
yeah, this is scary. And I was thinking, as you're talking, and I know more about your guys' story through Brad, but I think you could agree, like, even in the times in corporate America when you weren't living out a calling, that, like, there's aspects of that have prepared you to do what you're doing now.
Without a doubt. If I had not lived that journey and gotten that experience is what made me qualified for the role that I'm in now. And so while you're in it, it might not feel like you're going anywhere, but when I look back, without a doubt, every single job, including the last one I was in, that is what made me qualified for the role that I'm in now, even though now I'm in nonprofit and that was for profit, but the skills and everything that I was doing is what allowed me to have the job that I'm in now. So.
And you used an interesting word that was the next question I wanted to ask. Exhaustion. You were exhausted.
Yes.
Do you find it's a different kind of exhaustion now that you're in a different kind of space that's more in tune with your heart's calling?
Absolutely. It's a good exhausted. It's a good tired versus a depressed, exhausted. You have no energy to think, to feel. You feel sort of dead. Is how I described it. When you're working in something that feels more in line with your calling or what you were created to do, it's a good tired. And there's a huge difference between the two.
Brad, did you notice a difference too?
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. The amount of energy that you could just see leave her when she walked through the door when she was in corporate America was... It hurt my heart. And I'm like, you kind of feel, in a sense, like the partner of an addict of some kind, because I would go into this ultra protective mode with the kids. Mommy can't do this right now, but let's do this together, kind of thing. And now that she has this role and has had for over 5 years now, she's tired, but she's still engaged. And the engagement is still there. And when she comes through the door, it's not, okay, I have enough energy to get from this spot right here to the bed, and then I'm done.
That's it.
And now it's, hey, even if I had a rough day, what's going on with you guys? And there's an engagement.
There's something left.
Oh,
when you
yeah.
get home.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I love about you guys, look, you just did it. You just finished each other's sentences there. We
23 years to do that.
Well, we launched this podcast with this idea that there is something about connecting with like-minded folks or folks whose hearts are aligned with one another. There's a chemistry to that, right? And I think one of the shining examples of how chemistry happens is in a marriage and how you work together. So you're exhausted, you're coming home daily, and you come in and pick up and say, how can I be for you what you're not able to be right now? One of my favorite couples in life says marriage is not 50-50, it's 100 and 100. And so if you're not able to give 100, the other person has to try 120, or at least, in some, but which is a crazy phenomenon to some people who go, bat for bat. So I love that's what happened, but then that you got kind of a freedom from that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now you work with this super unique population, I think so, in the foster and adoption world.
Yes.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, Brad and I adopted our second child 11 years ago now, I think. More.
No.
12, 13, I don't know.
13.
She's 14. So, okay, it was 13 years ago.
She was 15 months when we got her.
Yeah,
so.
we adopted her from China. She had some medical needs. And then along down the line, we became foster parents. And then we adopted a son from foster care as well, a teenage son. But along that, partway through that journey, I think, was when I came into the role that I'm in now in a nonprofit space, which actually is working in foster care and adoption specifically.
So you'd already gone on the adoption fostering journey before even getting into this vocationally.
And it was one of those areas, one of 2 or 3 that I was passionate about and wanted to try to find, a role in. And so God blessed me to be able to do that. But yeah.
And you work, so most people love littles.
Yes.
Littles that need homes.
Yes.
Littles.
You don't work with the littles.
No.
You work with the population that is less likely to get adopted.
Correct. So the population we work with are the children in foster care who have the hardest time getting into an adoptive home. And so those children are the older children, 9 and older, but a lot of teenagers.
9 and older.
Yes.
By 9.
By 9, your chances of being adopted from foster care are very, very small.
Do you see younger and like multi-sibling families where there's because we had some friends that adopted through your organization. Their youngest was 4, but there were 3 of them.
Exactly. So we work with older youth. We also work with sibling groups, just like you're saying. So they might be younger, but they'll be in a sibling group, because when most people think about adopting, they think of adopting 1, maybe 2, but 4. Who wants to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so those children have a hard time, and often they're split up, and we don't want them to be split up. I don't think that's in their best interest. And then children with special needs, either physical, emotional, those type of youth. That's who we focus on.
So beyond what most could probably talk about, which is the care and nurturing any child and adolescent wants and needs, what are the benefits of being adopted at any point prior to adulthood for post-adolescence?
Yes. They're huge. So many people, I can't tell you, I'll sit on a plane and you get into that comfortable. What do you do? What do you do?
So you're a plane talker.
Well, I'm typically not, but I will respond
You are
if there's
that
somebody.
person.
I'm polite and I will engage.
If you don't get your earbuds in quickly enough.
And I literally,
Like I sit down with my book and I'm like, I've got a book open, everybody. Don't even.
This is my fence, right?
I literally had a man say to me, well, why does an 18-year-old need adopted? So like, what do you do? Like you adopt them and then like they're gone. And so I think it's that challenge to think of yourself, even as an adult, a 30-something, 40-something, 50, whatever. Do you need a family? Do you need a family? And I think we all need a family. And so thinking about the 16-year-old, 17, 18-year-old, they're at such a critical point in their lives. They're making huge decisions. They're might not always make the best decisions, but they don't have anyone to coach them through life. And even when they're 22 and their car breaks down, and who do they call? And who takes them to college if they're lucky enough to even go? And where do they go on breaks? Who do they spend Christmas with? You always need a family. And so every single youth that we've worked with, they're very clear that family has made all the difference. And it's really the stability. There are a lot of great foster families that do great work, and foster care itself is a good thing. But what it lacks is that it's not permanent. A child doesn't know that they have a forever family that they can always come back to, even when they're 30, 40, 50.
So what are some of the common barriers that you've seen to people even engaging in the process, or being willing to take a step to say maybe a new kid could enter our home?
Yeah. There's so many misperceptions about children in foster care, and I think people do tend to gravitate towards the younger children because you feel like you can shape and mold them, and it feels a little bit less risky. And so I think that's the age is a big barrier to people feeling like they can still have an influence on the child. And that they can positively influence that child. So that's what I've seen is one of the bigger barriers to people just with foster care in general, and adopting youth, is being afraid of the age and what's already been formed and what's already there, and can I change it, and can I affect it, and can I live with it?
Well, the stigma is there too, that these are the kids that they're gonna steal from you. They're going to burn your house down. They're going to kill you.
They're going to hurt your children. They're going to molest your children. I can't tell you how many people, when we brought a teenage boy into our house with 2 teenage girls.
How can you do that to your family?
Really tried to talk us out of it.
Yeah, wow.
And, what they don't understand is, trust me, Mama Bear's on the case.
Sure.
Okay?
Right.
I'm sleeping with one eye open until I understand that situation. But that teen boy deserves a chance. He deserves a family.
That just brings up for someone who has no, education or whatever. How long did it take for you guys as parents to feel comfortable? And for him to embrace the 2 girls that are already in your home as his sisters.
Yeah. In some ways, I think that's still forming. We adopted him a year and a half ago.
November.
Yeah. He's been with us close to 2 years. And every month brings more comfort, I think. There's no fear. There's nothing of that.
Yeah.
We know him very well. He knows us very well, but just getting used to each other and having those cycles of a year go by. I feel like just now, in a lot of ways, we're feeling a lot more gelled.
Well, it's interesting. I get to be around all 3 of them in youth group, and I see some of that sibling dynamic playing out.
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting to me, how quickly just cohabitating, just living under the same roof and sharing the same space and being in each other's face.
Yeah.
how quickly that starts
Yeah.
to form.
I think you're polite for about a year.
Oh, probably.
I think that's your goal. Your bottom line, baseline goal is I'm just going to be polite, and if I can get beyond the politeness to
Right. Saying it like it is, and everybody feeling okay to say that, that's when you know you've gelled a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Well,
and for us, I think it took a good year.
Well, you adopted kind of a super extrovert.
oh my goodness,
His comfort level probably leaps and bounds ahead of some
Yeah.
kids. That
it was an explosion, to use your language, an explosion to our whole life, because we're a family of introverts.
Yes.
We're a family of soft-spoken introverts, and he ain't.
No flexing. No flex to super flex, right?
There's super fly flex.
Oh, that's funny. So did he have a say? Like at some point as a child, is it a certain age that they get to say whether they want to be adopted or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
12.
If they're over age 12, they need to be able to sign a document in front of the judge at the
Okay.
adoption, at the actual adoption, saying, yes, this is what I want. And they sign it in front of the judge. So they've been asked all along. Absolutely, they have a say. And I think when we approached him about it, it was, look, you can stay with us. Even if we don't adopt you, I mean, you can stay as a foster child in our home. But we are totally willing to discuss adoption and open to that and eager to talk about that if that's what you want. But it's your life, and you need to want that as well. And so either way, you can stay here.
And
know?
we went a little further in that, even that we said we're open to this, but take a few weeks to wrap your mind around that. In that we don't want you to answer right now, do you want to be in this family or not? You haven't even thought of us as anybody but just a place to stay.
Sure.
Think of us as, what would it be like to have these people as my family? And let's revisit that in a few weeks.
I had never even thought of the difference between the two questions, because even my brain's like, there's a difference in a safe, stable, consistent environment, warmth, cool in the summer, like food always, versus we're offering you a family, which is that's relational dynamics now, where you're going to be able to rely on us, but you're going to also be able to rely on us to hold you accountable, to,
There's a different level of responsibility.
Yeah, and it's a commitment on both sides.
That's right.
To say you want to be a part of a family.
I love their approach too. So Brad and I were riding bikes quite a bit during all this and talking about it, leading up to your guys' vacation, which was kind of a monumental thing. But they approached it so Christ-like. It wasn't, hey, if you meet these expectations, it was, you guys went all in and let him know, hey, we're all in with who you are right now.
Yeah.
Well,
And knowing like having a family is going to impact, a person, but there was no expectation of live up to a standard and then we're going to welcome you in.
We didn't want to make him feel like he was auditioning for a family.
Right.
Within
Which
that
I think is a
timeframe.
very Christ-like way of approaching adoption.
we're willing to be a family to a kid, and it happened to be him, but like any kid that needs a home, we're willing to be a family to. That's the bottom line. Not a kid that looks like, is like, behaves like,
Right.
fill in the blank. I'm really surprised that one of the biggest hindrances is a fear of what an older kid might be like.
Yes.
And not because people live in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes. So
Yes.
space isn't necessarily an issue, but there is a limited amount of resources that people feel like they have in terms of time. I'm already investing in maybe my own biological kids or the kids I already have in my home. So how am I ever going to invest in other kids? Did you have to have that conversation amongst the two of you? Was there a conversation that you had with your girls? was that a tension that's had to be worked through at all?
Yeah, I mean, our girls were a part of this every step of the way, even, just from the day that we started fostering, every placement that we had. And in this instance, too, in the son that we adopted, they were a part of that decision, and they had to vote yes. And they did. And they got to the point where they're like, stop asking. You guys make the decisions.
Their heart was always out front in that when we would ask, they'd always say, we don't think they should go anywhere else. Why would they have to go anywhere else? And they were, it didn't matter who was in our house, even no matter how difficult the situation might have been, they were always, well, of course.
People with children are so afraid of bringing someone from foster care into their home because they might hurt that child, or life might be harder. It might be tough. While you're working through all the things that child in foster care has emotionally had to go through. What we're hoping, what we think we've seen play out, our children are not perfect, but our hope is that by doing this, it changes them too. And it teaches them what should be normal. And what should be normal is opening up your door to people who might not be like you and might not always be easy to live with, because they're heartbroken and they've had a rough life. And so it has been their normal. And so far, so good. I think it's shaped their character, and that's what we hope for. But
I'm trying to think of the word. Your kids, whoever they may be, that you have from birth or from childhood, they're going to go through a lot of different traumas in their life, and the thing that they have that these foster kids don't is they have stability at home. Well, we would hope so.
Yeah.
People support.
Yeah. And so our girls from very little have gone through difficult things, but they knew they had a mom and a dad that were going to be there and were solid, and we're going to work through this, whatever it is. And these foster care is messy.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to go into it and it's just going to be all sunshine and rainbows, I'm sorry. But the stuff you see on the backside, the work is difficult, but when you see those
sunshine
nuggets,
and rainbows,
you see those nuggets of really good stuff, it's so much worth it. And it's so worth the journey that what would happen to this kid if we didn't? And
oh man, that's a question.
That takes
isn't it?
it to a different level.
What would happen to this kid if we didn't?
Yeah.
That's a double mic drop. I thought Jill had the mic drop, and then Brad dropped the mic on top of her mic drop.
Well, there's been a really good spotlight placed on this research behind adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
And the Surgeon General of the state of California, has released all this science and research and is really promoting not just how to treat latent exhibits and expressions of what's happened when you have adverse childhood experiences, but also how do we proactively prevent this down the road adulthood happening, both physical health and mental health and behavioral unhealth. How do we prevent that from happening? And one of the things is, and it's basic Jesus, it's nurturing relationships or healing, period.
Right.
At any space and place and time, have a nurturing relationship, come alongside someone, and you're going to see some cracks and holes heal up and become, more complete.
Right.
And that's a beautiful gift. And I know Mark 3, just because I was in it this morning, is one of the passages people in at least the Western church really wrestle with, because it's where Jesus says, who's my mother, who's my brothers, and he strikes this crazy tension of my family are you who are with me, not just biological family. And I think a lot of people in the church today struggle with that.
They do.
And I don't know what you all have experienced as a response from Christians or non-Christians to the work that you do, Jill, or just the life choice to open your home. But can you speak to some of that? Has there been a difference in a Christian response versus maybe people who don't have a faith responding?
I wish I could give a positive answer on that. You know what? Our home church has been awesome. And I think the response from our home church, so many people have come alongside, and they're doing the work now too. And so our home church has been incredible. Outside of that, in general, unfortunately, Christians have been just as negative, actually probably more negative than non-Christians when you tell them what you're doing. I actually had someone who says he's a Christian say to me, the Bible says you're supposed to take care of your own, and you bring those kids into your house and they're going to ruin your children. Don't you dare do that. Biblically, you need to care for your own children. And I thought, you have clearly not opened your Bible and read it.
He's reading the message.
Clearly.
Hey,
the almost word of God.
The Bible and what Jesus taught is not at all about protecting yourself
or your own. Right.
It's always about reaching out to the outsider. Always, 100%. And so, unfortunately, I've not found the church as a whole to embrace it on an easier or more positive way than outsiders. I think outside the church, people respond maybe even more positively.
Yeah.
They're just so curious about it.
I love what you said about how your own kids are going to be impacted by it, because I think that's an example of not just, part of faith is stretching your comfort zone, but also like seeing how God has worked in, that leap of faith, because there's no doubt about it. You guys wouldn't deny that bringing someone into your home that you don't know, especially a teenage boy when you got two teenage girls, there is a leap of faith aspect to that.
Absolutely. 100%.
No parachute there.
Yeah.
No. So we ended the first half of this episode with a little, how would you inspire someone who would want to take a leap into a new call or new purpose? So with this part, how would you inspire someone who's thinking, I want to be involved with kids who need a home? Whatever level that might look like. What would you say to them to nudge them in another step forward?
Yeah. Well, first, I would probably say the same thing. The other answer I gave was talk to people, and that's what I would say. Find people who are doing it. Find people who are working in youth in foster care, and talk to them about their interactions. I think lots of counties have foster care sort of open houses. You can go, you can listen, you can talk to caseworkers, no commitment needed, and find out a little bit more. But I would encourage them to step outside of the comfortable. And I have found that if you're curious about it, and if you're thinking about it, and if this little nugget keeps coming back to you, that's usually a God moment where he keeps just kind of putting it in front of you. And you should step forward one step at a time and talk to other people and get involved in some way.
The other thing that a lot of churches will say that it's important to take care of these kids. And everybody gets overwhelmed by the numbers. Over 150 million orphans in the world.
Wow.
150 million kids that are on their own. And that's astronomical.
Yeah.
But the stat I've heard several times is if 10% of all people that believe in Jesus Christ would take care of one kid, there wouldn't be any orphans in the world.
If 10% of all the people who believe in Jesus, just 10% of them.
Of those people, not the people that don't believe in Jesus, just the ones that believe in Jesus.
And only 10% of them.
10% that say, I believe in Jesus Christ, would take care of one kid, it's taken care of.
Wow.
So the question is, what's the percentage in your church?
Yeah.
If it's 10%, great, go for 11. But as Jill said, if it keeps coming back to you, if this thought or this topic just keeps coming into your path, maybe it's something you need to pray about and explore. The whole job thing that we talked about earlier, it was something that every day when she came through the door, it was coming back. And we need to explore this. And she would never have the job now if she had not stepped away from where she was. And she took that leap of faith in knowing that God's going to take care of us one way or another. And if he's bringing foster care and adoption into your path that often, he's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
You just need to have a little faith in him.
I would add to that too, and this is something I've learned through you guys and being a part of our church where adoption and foster care is a huge part of the community. There's ways to support people even if you're not going down that road yourself.
Yes.
And my eyes have been open to that, just being a part of that community. So it's not an all-in necessarily.
Right.
Not everyone is going to go down that path.
And not everyone's made to be maybe a
Correct.
But there's ways to support those who do.
right.
And they need it.
They desperately
Wraparound
need it.
care is what
They
we
work-
talk about.
Foster families, foster parents desperately need support.
Yeah.
Someone to watch the kids, someone to ask how it's going, someone to bring by some groceries, give them a little time. Yeah.
So your challenge this week, audience, like you don't already know, is maybe consider where you are in your life, what you define as family. How open is your home? Maybe to kids, maybe to others. Maybe that's where you start. Maybe you open the Word and you read the end of Mark chapter 3 and you consider, what does Jesus mean when he's talking about who his family is and who are the people in his care and his close-knit circle. Oh, we hope you leave this with some thoughts and some nudges in a direction closer to God. For Ministry Chemistry, I'm Renee.
Still Mike.
And Jill today.
And Brad.
Woohoo! We'll hear you next time.